Yeah, so I was going to like the graveyard downstairs where I could have went upstairs and completely avoided the whole situation.
Yeah.
I kept running into these skeletons that just kept messing me up, and like I can see why a lot of people would be turned off by this, and I can see why a lot of people are giving this like this negative hype in terms of like, this and that, like it's not for me. But once you get past all that, like it really rewards you playing it well. Like you run into some enemies and you'll be like, they'll absolutely destroy you. Like they'll just, with no excuse whatsoever, they'll just kill you, and you won't even think that it's your fault. You'll just be like, well, like the game is just not fair. And then once you start fighting them more and more, you'll notice these like animations and these other things. And then like next time you come across them, you'll be like, all right, well now I have the upper hand. And like it's the kind of game that does trial and error, but it's a very, very challenging game. I really wish I had it to keep playing it more. But also, like, my Xbox would probably go through the window at some points because I was at the store and like I was so twitchy with the controller. The guy had to come up to me and be like, "Look, do you want me to give you a wireless one so you don't pull the cord out like with the Xbox on it when you get mad?" But yeah, yeah, I guess we kind of crossed over everything. I mean, there was also Forza, but who gives a shit about Forza? Unless you're into car porn, nobody. I'm sorry, driving game fanatics. I can't go on board with Forza right now. Like I just don't, like I know the content is there. It's just not my kind of game. I'd rather play more Mortal Kombat.
Yes, sir.
Quite honestly, I'd rather do that. So, I guess we're kind of gonna move on then and just talk about some stuff that came out this week. There's only really 2 issues I want to bring up in the time that we have. And that's, we'll start with Hitman, I suppose, because the story is, for those of you who don't know, and I did a write-up on this before, but now it's kind of my chance to talk about it in depth, is at E3, IO Interactive sat down with some of the media staff, and they showed them a 15 to 16 minute walkthrough of Hitman Absolution, which is their new game. And finally yesterday as we were recording this, probably not yesterday when you're listening to this, they revealed the video to the public. So I watched it, and I'm a big Hitman fan, but my biggest question right now is because I sent it to you.
Yeah.
And you watched it, and you're not really like, have you played Hitman games before, or is this kind of your first?
No, I've never played a Hitman game.
Well, okay, so kind of from your first impressions, like, what do you think about the game now that you got to see the gameplay? Like, are you excited about it? Is it something you might look into? Is there anything that stood out for you?
Yeah.
Okay, you're gonna have to come back, do it again, say everything again, because you cut out right after yeah.
Okay, well, I mean, from the gameplay, man, I gotta say the game looks pretty badass. Everything. I think what they really nailed down was the environment. Like, how when you're sneaking around and just the conversations between the NPCs and everything. And like, I don't know, sometimes enemies standing there, an idiot, not really doing anything. But from the gameplay, they really nailed it down, make it like seem natural how the enemies are walking around and how they're communicating with each other. So, game.
This is gonna be so much fun because the people who are listening to this are gonna have to pretty much piece together what you mean because you cut out like 2 or 3 times, but it was too like I felt so bad if I interrupted you because but yeah, I agree. Like I kind of caught everything that you had. We'll fix your mic for next one. If when you guest on the next one, we'll figure out what it is your mic was doing. And
okay, my bad.
No worries. It's a technical difficulty. It's the first podcast. You know, it's trial and error. We'll get it figured out. But yeah, I agree. Like, I feel like, and you haven't played any other Hitman games, and I have. And like in previous ones, as much as I loved them, like there were a lot of things that you kind of had to look over. Like he was very static. He was very rigid. Whereas now the movements feel fluid, and like it pretty much feels as if everything he does is so smooth. Like all the rolls in and out of cover, all the takedowns, the climbing, a la Assassin's Creed.
Yeah.
Like that shit was pretty cool. And like I think one of my favorite parts was knocking one of the police officers with a bong.
Yeah.
He just picked it up. He just knocked the shit out of him. Like that's the most like it's the most improvisational thing in the world. Like like first you think like, oh, like I have a like he had a gun. And he's like, why don't you just shoot him? But no, he picked up the bong and just knocked 2 police officers out with it. It was like the coolest takedown in video games.
Yeah.
But yeah, like they look. Sorry, go ahead.
I mean, I was just gonna say, like, I think what makes the game look really good, it just looks so like fluid, like everything just pieces together so well. From the takedown and from sneaking around and how he could cover his face.
Yeah, that's the other thing with me is that like in previous games you change clothes and there was this kind of mechanic if you stood too close to like I'll call them officers, like they were like security guards, but they were like higher ranking security guards. And if you stood too close to them, they could like potentially recognize you and know that it's not like you're not part of the staff or whatnot. But it was really basic the way they did it. So like you just basically couldn't be too close to anybody. Whereas here they kind of have this way like where he covers his face and he almost escapes, and then somebody thinks that he's someone else and like calls him out on it. It was really cool the way they kind of made that a part of the game, but it's also a part of the game that's not like, oh, you just can't do it a very specific way, but it's more like you have these options that will affect your gameplay, but you can still kind of successfully pull them off as you would in real life. And I think the biggest thing was like when he was getting chased by the helicopter, when we're talking about fluid and dynamic, like how everything around him was falling apart from like the wind from the motor. And
can't really hear anything right now.
You can't hear me?
I mean, did you just say anything? Cause
mic
cut out.
I think our internet connection was kind of breaking up, but I think we're back.
Okay.
Okay, but yeah, like the wind from the motor from the helicopter when it was falling, like when we were talking about fluid, like just how the wind was knocking everything down.
Yeah.
It was absolutely amazing. Like I was just watching, and I was just like, yeah, this game, they're definitely stepping up their stuff visually.
Yeah.
That's Hitman. Like the gameplay looks really good. I mean, you haven't played it, and you were impressed from the sound of it. I am I'm ready to start choking people out with wires again. And I'm not talking just in game. Like if I can't afford that game, like criminal activity will happen to acquire it. Most definitely. And again, the second biggest news, and I guess I would classify as probably one of the biggest gaming news of the week, maybe even the month, we'll see how it goes, is the fact that Mass Effect 3 will now have multiplayer.
Yeah.
Multiplayer in Mass Effect 3. Now, we both love this series. This is something that me and you could probably talk about for like an hour.
Yeah.
But in the interest of time, I'm going to try and cut it down to maybe 5 minutes. How do you feel about this? Let's start with that.
Well,
You have to start from the start.
Alright, well, originally, when I heard about talks of multiplayer, I'd say probably like a couple months ago, I was pretty pissed off because that's something I did not want in Mass Effect. But, apparently, I mean, like, hopefully they're not taking anything away from the single player.
So yeah, like,
just make you rage so hard.
Yeah, man, I have to agree with that. Just because, like, my biggest thing is I was just like, my saying, and I'm still standing by it, is that it better be on a separate disc. Like, the multiplayer content better be like Rage. Because Rage, in case people don't know, it's on 3 discs, and multiplayer is all separate on the 3rd disc. Because to me, Mass Effect is all about the single player experience, and I feel like if you're taken away from that, you're missing the point of what this game was. Like, it did fine the first 2 installments without multiplayer. It contested for the Game of the Year. I think one of them may have even won Game of the Year when it came out.
Yeah. And
kind of just knock it down now just for that. to multiplayer. Like when I was watching the video, they just released a video recently about explaining. It's like, oh, this is Mass Effect 3 is the perfect point for people who never knew Mass Effect to get into it. Well, no, the perfect point would be Mass Effect 1.
Yeah.
Because then you'd actually get to experience the story from the start. But I guess from what they're saying, like it's not gonna be deathmatch, it's not gonna be something like stupid like that, but it's gonna be co-op where you're not Shepard, but whatever you do in co-op will still affect your story. And
Really?
well, yeah, that's what they said. They're just like, oh, you do these things because like the first 2 games are like Shepard getting these things done, and the third one's like an all-out war. They said like you have these squads, you act in these squads as different races, which I mean, I'm obviously gonna be playing as a Krogan, like non-negotiable. And
Yeah.
and I feel like what they said is like if you do really good, like whatever you do in multiplayer will potentially affect your ending. Can you hear me right now? Am I?
Yeah.
Yeah. Whatever you do in multiplayer can potentially affect your ending in single player. Like, I think when I was watching the video, they said, oh, the best possible ending, like you'd have to do multiplayer and single player, which like, so like it will add to the single player experience. And that's a very slippery slope for me because I'm just like, I'm not going to jump into multiplayer when I first get that game. Like, I want to sit down and have my initial save and just play the single player from start to the end and maybe do multiplayer after. And I don't feel like, I don't want to go into multiplayer to have a full completion for my game. Like,
Yeah.
and I think like, hopefully they don't, hopefully like it could affect you, but hopefully you could still get the full thing from single player. But I mean, like, how do you feel about that? Like, what if you'd have to do multiplayer to say like save somebody or like affect one of the outcomes?
Well, honestly, I'd call that would be bullshit. Like, I don't feel like multiplayer should be necessary for the Mass Effect game at all. Like, I kind of feel like they're either trying to pull more people in, just for like getting more fans, or I feel like they might be testing multiplayer out to maybe make like an MMO in the future. But if they're trying to make it essential to the single player, then that's bullshit because, like you said, until I'm done with single player, I mean, I really don't want the two to be associated with each other. So
Yeah, like that seems to be the popular opinion to everybody I talk to. It's like leave like if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And like I'm kind of like blaming EA for the whole thing too. Like I have a little underhand vendetta for EA games. Like they kind of pushing all these things on people. Like I guarantee the release of PS3 version of Mass Effect 2 was a big EA idea, and like I'm not a console person, like fanboy. I have both consoles, but to me it's just like, well, PS3 players, they get to experience Mass Effect 2, and that's great. There's more people to play the game, but at the same time, just like they don't get to play Mass Effect 1.
yeah.
Like if I was a PS3 player and I got like all I got was a 17-minute comic that explained the story, like I'm like, I guess this is good enough, but this game had all this hype from 1, and like I can't even like tailor this save. They probably won't be as involved with the game as they would have been if they played the first one. But I don't know, multiplayer, I think it's up in the air. I'm happy to know that not just doing team deathmatch. On the other hand, though, if they did do some stuff like team deathmatch, BioWare, Mass Effect style, I feel, and didn't tie into the main story, I'd be like, all right, well, this doesn't relate to the main story. I won't even play it at all. But basically, if there is a very, very tight relationship between single player and multiplayer to the point where you playing or not playing multiplayer may affect stuff in your game, BioWare is going to be getting a very angry letter.
Yeah, I mean, how do you feel about like a Mass Effect MMO? Because like I really think that that's kind of what they're trying to go for. It's trying to maybe test multiplayer out, see what they can do with it. Like, is that something you'd be interested in?
I'd eat that shit up. Like, I would eat that shit up and ask for more. Like, I've never been a big MMO fan. I used to make fun of all the World of Warcraft kids when I worked at GameStop. But I'm gonna be honest, I'm probably getting the Old Republic because Knights of the Old Republic on the original Xbox, first and second, were my first, like, like my first console encounter with BioWare's work.
Yeah.
Those games were absolutely phenomenal. Like the stuff they did, and just